In the year of many sequels and part ones, all those sorts of different things in film, we are back now with another one, but this time by Zack Snyder. Folks, let's jump into the review of the new film Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the channel today for another review. And today we're going to be reviewing the new film Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire, which is coming to Netflix December 21st. It also made a very limited theatrical run starting on December 15th. So there's really a lot to talk about with this film. And yes, I know that there's already some reviews out with mixed reactions. Some people liking it, some people not liking it. This, I think, is being rated as Zack Snyder's lowest rated film on Rotten Tomatoes, if that means anything to you. But nonetheless, people are talking about it. So, as always, it's award season. So, with this having that limited theatrical run, they probably were aiming to see would this get some type of nod in some category at one of these award shows. So, yes, that's probably why the release is the way it is. But honestly, I don't really see anything. Maybe visually, maybe, because it is that sort of genre that does sort of typically get that type of attention. But not really sure what they saw that that I didn't in terms of it being considered for this season. But even with that being said, with the mixed reactions, did I love it? Did I hate it? I thought the film was very okay. It didn't reinvent the wheel. It didn't move the needle in terms of this genre, in terms of the library of projects that Zack Snyder has. But I didn't hate it. And then the other big thing is that it's a part one. So how did it do with a standalone film, and or how does this sort of deliver in terms of the foundation of many films to come? So I don't know the news. I don't know how many or what's being planned. All I know is one thing. As a standalone, I'm not mad at it. I'm actually so not mad at it that if this was the only film of whatever they were trying to plan, I'll be okay with it. And the biggest thing to me is that it's Zack Snyder. So there's a couple of different other notes that is attached to it. Number one, him talking about his extended cut coming early of next year. And then, you know how he has this extended cut, then the director's cut. I don't need all that. To me, it feels like that really takes away from everybody's expectations or even excitement in terms of checking this out. And yes, even though it's coming to Netflix, like, why would one sort of dedicate their time of a film that's a little over 2 hours being billed at 134 minutes? Why would anybody exhaust that time on a film when the director's already talking about his vision, and with that being the extended cut / director's cut, whatever it may be? So I don't know. And then they're also talking about that the part 2 is going to come out sometime next year, whatever it may be. I don't know. I don't know. All I know is that for what it is with this film, there seems to be a lot of distractions that's taken away from this film's release. And again, for it being a standalone film, I'm not mad at it. In terms of it starting a universe or being a part of a trilogy, a sequel, or whatever it may be that they're trying to do, I would be okay if it wasn't. And if Zack Snyder wasn't attached to this film, this was like some new up and coming director or somebody who had, you know, a very good previous film like Gareth Edwards, and he comes in and he's like, hey, I want to do a film much like he did with The Creator, which is great, by the way, and did not promise to establish an entire universe. But, you know, if it did very good, then maybe I would be also okay with just the idea of enjoying this and then sort of rallying behind the idea of wanting a sequel, instead of us already having that that news and information that sequel is coming. I don't know. I just feel like it takes away from the film. So it's a weird little approach. Whether you like it or not, I definitely had those thoughts upon watching the film. With that being said, to talk about the film, as I mentioned, I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. It didn't push the needle. It wasn't the next big thing by Zack Snyder. It just served as a very okay film. And without a doubt, you can tell that this film is Zack Snyder's sort of vision of his Star Wars universe. I will also say that there seems to be a lot of inspiration from 300 when it comes down to the visuals, when it comes down to some of the special effects. And without a doubt, this film is overkill with slow motion shots. Way too many. Just way too many. That and the glaring light, as I love to call it, the Michael Bay special, overkill. Just overkill. Every single scene that there's an opportunity is there. And every single scene that there shouldn't be an opportunity is there. So, I don't know. I thought, wow, you just kind of get over it. It's like, all right, just cut it out, But I did love the visuals of 300, and by all means, I totally see the inspiration from that film in this. There's a lot of shots, special effects, CGI that just says 300 to me. But in this film, to kind of talk about it a little bit, you have a character, Kors, played by Sofia Boutella, who's really great in this film, by the way. She's a former member of the Imperium who basically spends this entire film recruiting a small army, but yet skilled assassins to not only protect this small village, but also because they want to make a statement against, we'll just go right now in terms of saying the bad guys, but the mother world. And then across from her is Admiral Noble, who is our villain, played by Ed Skrein. He's great too. I think the two of them have a really good dynamic in terms of the good guy and bad guy. Very much a dynamic that if you are to explore this for many films, I think it works because you definitely feel that, especially in scenes that they are together, you definitely feel that dynamic that there's definitely bad blood. Something's going to go down. You're waiting for that ultimate scene, that big fight between the two of them. And everything just amounts to that. And while Admiral Noble is definitely just a small person on the totem pole here, he still feels very big and very much a problem for everything that's kind of going on there. But with that being said, too, Mother World and their leader, they are basically searching for anybody who's attached to this revolution/resistance and is willing to kill anybody in their way. So much like Star Wars, if you kind of get the gist here in terms of the resistance and the rebels and whatnot. So I'm not going to do any more Star Wars comparison, but like if you know Star Wars or a big Star Wars fan, you like, this sounds very familiar because yes, it does. It did. But anyway, the Dreadnought of the Mother World, that's sort of the army that's after all of these folks and so on. But as far as like the tone of the film, very early in the film feels very spicy. There's definitely like some very mature gestures and language, and I'm not sure if I felt like it was unnecessary and kind of misplaced at times. I kind of was wondering where this might go, but I guess they were trying to establish an adult tone in this, but it also didn't really serve purpose for anywhere outside of that initial first act. As I mentioned, there's a lot of slow motion, and while there is a lot of slow motion, there is some pretty cool action sequences, but again, it gets a little redundant because it's just over and over and over with that, the glaring shots, and so on. The score, I believe, is done by Junkie XL. The score is great. The score is great, and while I am a big fan of Zack Snyder and Hans Zimmer collaboration, I definitely was digging the two here. The score absolutely worked here. In terms of the visuals, the world building, the world design, there's a lot of different worlds. Some of them are very unique. Some of them are, you could almost say like you've seen them before or inspired by other worlds in whatever franchise or series that you've may seen. So you've definitely seen worlds like, oh, that kind of looks like this and that. So, but nonetheless, they did they did absolutely put on display a bunch of different worlds, a bunch of different characters, a bunch of different races and species, and so on. And even with that being said, too, just to kind of go back about like the human characters, Cleopatra Coleman's character and Army, they had some really, really, really cool design. I was definitely feeling that. The Blood Axes, I believe, is what they were called. The dialogue in the film was very meh. Like, there was definitely some times I was like, no one talks like that, and it just wasn't working. So I was not high on the dialogue at all. And then when it came down to like some of the human psychology, there was a lot of questionable decisions being made and actions by some of the characters. Like, for instance, there was times where folks had guns, could have used their guns, and chose not to. And I just don't know why. You know, it just didn't make sense. I don't want to give anything away, but that third act, you'll probably tell what I'm talking about. But even with that being said, the third act, I felt like is when the film really started to ramp up, really get into gear. You really start to understand the stakes. You got a full-fledged understanding of these characters and the significance of these characters. Everything just really started to get into gear. And then the stunts and the fight choreography was definitely cool. There definitely was some moments that were like, okay. There wasn't a lot of wild jaw-dropping moments you want to kind of go back on repeat. But there definitely was some, cool moments to say the least there. But as I mentioned, with all that being said, this didn't move the needle for me in terms of the genre, in terms of fight and stunt and action. As a Zack Snyder fan, or even if you're not, or even if you've been even kind of sometimey with him, this wasn't a film that might have get you back on the horse with him. I think the film just is a film that's going to get a lot of attention for a lot of different reasons. I definitely think you should check it out and kind of make your own assumption. But for me, it was just very much okay. I don't know if I go back to watch this until the sequel drops, just so I can kind of see the continuity between the two. There's definitely some characters I am interested in. And with the characters, because I can't believe I didn't mention this too, there's a ton of stereotypical characters for whatever reason. I don't know why, but there's just a lot of stereotypical characters and the tropes with these characters that you would think we probably would get away from, but here we are. Like, Asian people aren't the only people that do martial arts, but here we are. But anyway, even with that being said, just because of a fan of this genre and sci-fi and so on, I'm still very much interested in these characters, and I definitely want to kind of see their stories more fleshed out, especially with some of the names and actors attached to these characters. You want to really see them really get in here and do what they do, because I felt like this is only a tip of the iceberg in terms of it. Like I said, by the third act is when you really start to understand the stakes at hand, but understanding just the significance of these characters. Yes, they're introduced earlier in the film, but now you start to see where their role may be going forward. So, but as I mentioned, this is just a part one. So Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire, an extended cut is on the way, or director's cut, whatever you want to call it, early next year. And then they're saying that the direct sequel is also on the way to come April of next year. So it'll be on Netflix, folks, December 21st, 22nd, whatever it may be. Check it out. Let me know your thoughts about it. Did this film deserve all of the bad ratings that it's been getting, or the buzz, the hype, whatever it may be? Are you excited for it? Are you going to skip it? Whatever it's going to be, let me know in the comments below. Stay tuned, folks, because we got more reviews and content here at Big Old Belt Media very soon. Thank you for watching.